morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. Thank you, Jerry, for that beautiful prelude. My name is Darlene Anderson Alexander. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Sunday Services Coordinator for this morning's service. I'm so glad that you are able to be with us today via Zoom because you are each an essential part of our gathering today. Whether this is your first or 1,000th Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are with us. Together we create community, the community we so desperately need at this moment in time. Here at UU Danbury, our beliefs are diverse and inclusive. We have no shared creed, but rather a shared covenant. A covenant that is expressed through the inseparable shared values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity, all deeply connected through love. As a congregation, we have been gathering together for over 200 years. And as we work to build a more just world, we respectfully acknowledge that our physical building on Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury is on the traditional unceded land of the Powassit people. Our roots are deep and yet, of course, imperfect. Nope. That's my script for this morning, Reverend Tony. This morning, Reverend Tony leads us in a continuation of our month of exploring the theme of inclusion. As part of that theme, many of us are also participating in the Trans Inclusion in the Congregation series with a reflection on spirituality, religion, and the harm caused by religion when it excludes people because of who they are. We had also planned to welcome 5 new members to our congregation today. But since a celebration such as this is much better experienced in person, we will postpone the ceremony until Sunday, March 2nd. Next week, people of all ages are invited to join music director Jerry and Reverends Tony and Sierra Marie for a multi-generational music and ritual-centered celebration of pluralism. Before we begin worship this morning, I invite you to set your Zoom setting to gallery view and greet your neighbors Brady Bunch style. Feel free also to say hi in the chat.
And audio.
This afternoon from 2 to 3:30, we will welcome visitors from our neighboring congregations and the general public for an introduction to Unitarian Universalism. We hope you can join us via Zoom to welcome our neighbors. The link was sent in an email yesterday, and I assume it will be sent again before we meet this afternoon. On Sunday, March 2nd, please join Reverend Tony and others to write postcards to elected officials encouraging them to oppose dehumanizing and discriminatory policies from the current administration. For more information about what's going on at UUCD, please see your order of service, our weekly email newsletter, and the events calendar on our website at uudanbury.org for a complete list of events. We make this time and this place holy simply by being together, and we begin by lighting the flaming chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and Reverend Tony is going to light a chalice from his home. Please join me in reciting this morning's words to light our chalice, and here they are on our screen. Love
is
the
the
spirit
of this congregation,
and
and
justice
is
its
its
light.
light.
This
This
is our
covenant
to
to
dwell
dwell
together
together in peace,
to
to seek and
speak
speak the
truth
truth
in
in love,
to
to
help
help
one
one
another
another,
and
and
celebrate
celebrate
life.
life.
Now please join in singing our hymn of welcome, Darkest Days, written by Stuart Stotts, and words will be on the screen.
In deep winter, the sun will rise. Even in deep winter, the sun will rise. And on the darkest days, even in deep winter, the world will
So if there are children out there this morning, I invite you to come closer to the screen. And everyone, please join me in the children's affirmation. The words will be on the screen. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. So this morning we're going to be seeing a video, which is a poem by Cynthia Rylant called God Went to Beauty School.
God went to beauty school. They went there to learn to give a good perm and ended up just crazy about nails. So they opened up their own shop. Nails by Jim, they called it. They were afraid to call it Nails by God. They were sure people would think it was being disrespectful and taking their own name in vain, and then no one would leave a good tip. They got into nails, of course, because they had always loved hands. Hands were some of the best things they'd ever done, and this way they could hold one in theirs and admire those delicate bones just above the knuckles, delicate as a bird's wing. And after they'd done that a while, they would paint all the nails any color the person wanted and then say, "Beautiful," and mean it.
And now we're going to sing This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
I invite you to take a deep breath, settle into your chair where you're sitting this morning. I invite you to let your awareness be present to yourself and your surroundings where you are, and recognize that you are part of our community even as we all gather online. And just for a moment, I invite all of us to let silence speak to us for a moment. We hold tenderly in our hearts this morning all those who are healing from spiritual and religious wounds. May they come to a place where they can protect themselves from further hurt through wisdom, finding community, and love. In the spirit of Howard Thurman, our hearts sing, "Spirit of life, come to me with the light for my darkness. Come to me with courage for my fear. Come to me with hope for my despair. Come to me with peace for my anxieties. Come to me with joy for sorrow. Come to me with strength for my weakness. Come to me with wisdom for my confusion. Come to me with forgiveness for any wrongs I may have done and any one I may have hurt. Come to me with love for all the times I feel I am unlovable. Come to me with a strong sense of self to lift myself up. Spirit of life, come to me with everything life-giving and loving." Each of us comes here to our gatherings in person or online from singular lives where any of us at any time can feel out on the margins. And together we form an enriched community by feeding our relationships, by encountering friends, by being a part of the congregation. And we seek to create a place where wherever you are in your journey, whoever you are part of us and we are part of you. And we build this relationship step by sharing what's in our hearts with each other. So I invite you this morning, if you have a milestone, a prayer, joy, a concern in your heart, write it in the chat, and I will do the best I can to give voice to some of those, and I'm sure Darlene will help me if I'm missing any. And singing, How Could Anyone?
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your
They have this thing here. It says,
is a miracle?
send to D.I. Burner.
All right, if you want to send it to everyone, you have to click here.
My soul.
So when we give our time and our energy to the work of this community, and when we donate to its financial support, we are giving gifts to each other. Each one gives to and receives gifts from all of our members and friends, and together we give to the community around us. To give electronically this morning, you may use the QR code that will be projected on the screen, and you may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapham Ridge Road in Danbury. The offering will now be gratefully received, and thank you so much for your generosity.
In the Celtic Christian tradition, the Holy Spirit is not symbolized by a dove, but by a wild goose. I love this depiction of the holy as a wild goose. If you have ever dealt with geese, you know they can be ornery. Many people can tend to think about the spiritual life as being meditative nirvana and all feeling one with the universe. And it's not all the time. It's often like chasing after or even being chased by a wild goose. In the order of service today, we were going to pass out to you a game you could take home called The Fox and the Geese. That is an actual demonstration of how, well, just crazy chasing goose around can be and how crazy it can be for the geese to chase you. If you look up spirituality in an image database or a photography collection, you will see breathtaking sunrises, neatly raked plates of sand in a desktop Zen garden, a person with a fashion agency idolized body in a yoga pose on a beach against a gorgeous sunset, parting clouds with light streaming down from heaven, a statue of a person seated in a lotus position accepting offerings of incense sticks with smoke swirling skyward. Everything seems to speak of a perfect moment, free of anxieties, difficulties, stresses, and the just plain annoyances of daily life. The music of this spirituality playing in the background of these beatific scenes is echoing native flutes and resonating Tibetan singing bowls and Gregorian chants sung by huge monastic choirs. This spirituality tends to be symbolized by lotus flowers and doves and candle flames. And there are certainly times and moments in the spiritual life like this. But it's not the totality of the spiritual life, nor the only experience of the spiritual life. There's another, more complex, more ornery, more wild goose-ish aspect to human spirituality that I don't think we see represented all the time. If there was an image database for this spirituality, I think it might include things like my large extended Portuguese family shouting over each other at a holiday dinner meal, a professional wrestling bout, people struggling to remain in an inflatable raft as it bounces over Category 5 rapids, military recruits running an obstacle course, a bleary-eyed single parent barely awake shoving the clean laundry in the drawer unfolded. The musical setting is varied depending on who you might be. For me, it tends to be Bruce Springsteen, Led Zeppelin, the Ramones, and the Clash singing about London burning and living down by the river. And the spirituality isn't symbolized by doves and flowers. It's kind of symbolized by coyotes and ravens and wild geese. I think the Celts were onto something when the Christians told them about this Holy Spirit of God moving around in a mysterious, unpredictable way in the world. And they said, oh yeah, we already got that. That's called the wild goose. Like the other tricksters from the world's religions, the wild goose. I think spirituality is the human experience of existing. It's consciousness, emotions, being embodied, thoughts, feelings, it's movement, creativity. It's what's in us that appreciates the fondness of relationship, the arts, sciences. It's the part of us that gets wrapped in awe and shouts in celebration and cries in pain. It's bigger than theology and religion. To rob a person of spirituality is to rob them of something essentially human. And yet, in the name of religion, in the name of trying to delineate and specify the only way to be spiritual and human, religions and religious leaders have caused lots of harm to lots of people, even to the point of spiritual abuse. And many people find themselves to be enemies of religion and spiritual refugees. As much as I'm trying right now, and as much as sages and people have tried throughout the millennia, spirituality is ineffable, truly unable to be adequately expressed in words, although many words have been and are spent on trying to do it. I felt like I've been a spiritual person since I was a child in many ways. And my life's journey has taken me through Roman Catholicism and into Unitarian Universalism. And I often reflect that one of the reasons I ended up in Unitarian Universalism is because when I left the Catholic Church, all the congregations I visited were unfriendly and unwelcoming until I visited the Unitarian Universalist Church in my hometown of Leominster, Massachusetts. I tried other types of Christian churches. I visited the Congregationalists, the Episcopalians, and when I visited those churches, I am not kidding at all, visited about 4 or 5 other congregations when I left the Catholic Church. No one, not one person, talked to me after the service. When I attended the Unitarian Universalist congregation, I was welcomed as if I were a long-lost friend. And in a sense, I felt like I was, and I'm still here. Personally, with my spirituality, I grew up Catholic and I brought Jesus with me. And I still like liberal progressive Christianity. I like the stories of Jesus, the parables, the welcome to the people who are left out, the implication that taking care of others is doing justice, and taking the side of those who are left out and persecuted and oppressed is required. When my hometown church ordained me as a UU minister in 2007, I had one of the readings was from the Christian scriptures where Jesus stands up in the synagogue and reads from the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of God's favor. This was the essence of Jesus's teaching for me, and in many ways still is. I think every one of us is anointed, chosen, called, invited to bring the good news of hope and justice and equity, to proclaim release to those held captive for many reasons and in many ways, through injustices, inequity, hatreds, to set free the oppressed, to take their side, to proclaim a year of forgiveness, that everyone is included all the time in the holy, no exceptions. I feel I was very lucky growing up Catholic and my life in Catholicism because I never ran into really horrible aspects. I didn't run into fire and brimstone. I didn't run into the anti-gay crusade. I didn't run into the anti-abortion crusade. And so I feel very fortunate in many ways coming out of that background that I was able to bring with it positives, and I know a lot of people can't. Our trans inclusion course for this current session, session 4, asks us, among other things, to reflect on what stuck with you the most from this session. What surprised you? What brought you pain? What brought you hope and inspiration? And what brought me pain was that I've always felt myself to be deeply spiritual and a deeply religious person. I like my spirituality, but I also like the connection of the religious community. I loved church and church life when I was Catholic, and I still do as a Unitarian Universalist. And as I was going through the materials for this particular session, it came back to me once again that it hurts me that something that's been so central to my life, spirituality, religion, church, has been so damaging and so harmful and even abusive to other people. However you may have been hurt or harmed by spirituality or religion, I hope that this congregation in Unitarian Universalism can be a place of healing, a place of recovery from spiritual and religious wounds. I believe just about everyone has been wounded in some way by the world because of who they are and what they've experienced. Some of my wounds came from my parents' divorce, having depression, my experience of growing up as the fat kid and the kid with asthma. And as I grew up, I felt the spirit of the holy calling me. I got very involved in spirituality, very involved in church. And it hurt when I felt distanced from that religion I grew up in. And it felt joyous to find a religion that let all that flower and come to fruition. And I became really hurt when I couldn't become a religious leader in Catholicism because I wasn't going to live a life of celibacy. And yet, sticking with that feeling I had that this was the draw for me, I ended up being a religious leader, ordained minister in Unitarian Universalism. And for all the other things that have caused me a lot of pain and really disrupted my life, I was never told I was going to hell or that I was a lesser person for having asthma or being fat. I was never told I was an abomination for having depression. And I can only imagine the type of pain others experience at the hands of religion. I wonder if recovering from spiritual wounds is not unlike other types of recovery, except that it deals with the holy, with God, religion, spirituality, things that are supposed to be, at least say in the 12-step journey, a source of help on the way to recovery and the practice of recovery. Must be an extra degree of difficulty to trust a power greater than yourself when that power was used as a weapon against you to tell you you're unworthy, unlovable, or worse. An essential part of spiritual recovery might be finding a path with a power greater than yourself that works for you. In her book, Healing Spiritual Wounds, Reverend Carol Howard Merritt tells the story of someone in recovery in her congregation who found they couldn't use any image of God as they understood it until they framed God as love. That love was the higher power. And I really like that story, especially now with love in our new Unitarian Universalist values sitting at the center of the other values that are important to us. Spiritual wounds can prevent people from developing a spiritual literacy, a spiritual vocabulary, a spiritual tool belt, because theology, ritual, symbols, and prayer and other practices and terms are so often weaponized against them, become sources of pain. Eventually, when and if people who are spiritually wounded engage spiritual recovery or find their own spirituality, it might be more difficult to find the words and concepts to explain the journey, a little more difficult to find the tools and practices of a spiritual life. Because the spiritual life so often takes place in community, in a large sense, that's what religions are, people who are spiritually wounded find barriers when it comes to being part of religious or spiritual community because the spiritual community was the location and source of the wound. If you were harmed and hurt by religion, finding a spiritual community of any kind might even be a heroic journey and process, even though there are religious communities that are far better, more inclusive and welcoming, more loving and compassionate than the ones that hurt people. I deeply value interreligious and interfaith dialogue. We're having a program like that this afternoon. I do not believe any one theology, religion, or spiritual path has a monopoly on truth or spiritual practice. The deep mystery of love and the holy is at the heart a mystery, something we know and feel and intuit even after 20 minutes of somebody talking about it on Sunday morning. But I do believe that some religious ideas, some theologies are in fact better than others. I think some religions are better than others. But my criteria is pretty small for things that are bad. Any theology or religion or spiritual path that teaches that some people are intrinsically evil or less human than other people is wrong. I won't claim to have all the spiritual or religious answers, but I'm pretty certain of this. There is no such thing as a lesser person, and any philosophy, theology, or religion that says so is wrong, categorically wrong. Any theology, religion, or spiritual path that teaches it is the only way is wrong. Because I don't believe there is only one correct way to God, to life, the universe, the mysteries of everything. There's no one and only language, terminology, and way of looking at it. And I advise people to run far away from any person, religion, or group who tries to tell you otherwise. The writer Anne Lamott says, you can safely assume you've created God in your own image when it turns out that your God hates all the same people you do. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people frame God. They frame God and religion based on their hates, so that it affirms their hatreds, their fears, their anxieties, and not love, hope, and compassion. People tend to frame their religion to match their gods. And when God is controlling and exclusionary and punishing, that religion tends to practice hurt and harm and violence and even killing in its name. Hateful, hurtful, violent people create hateful, hurtful, violent religions and spiritualities. Petty, insecure, gaslighting, abusive people create petty, insecure, gaslighting, and abusive gods. My spiritual life has indeed been a wild goose chase, and I know that as wild as my chase has been, many others are far wilder. The spiritual life, human life, is complicated enough. I hope that together we continue to make our congregation and our religious life in Unitarian Universalism one that, even though we might chase geese, finds moments of lotus flowers and doves and sunlight through the clouds. That when people encounter us, they encounter that sense of the holy that says, you're beautiful, and means it. I invite you to join in singing with us where you are. Come and journey with me, our closing hymn of celebration.
Come to the song, come to the dance, bring all you are. Come with your voice, come with your heart, come and journey with me. Come and journey with me. Come, let the sun fill up your eyes. Take the time to look around and love, just love, and walk with each other. Come and journey with me. Come and journey with me. Come and see, come and be all you are and all you can be, and leave all behind, then calm your mind. Come and journey with me. Come and journey with me.
Let us join together in words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. This service is over, and our time to serve the world begins. May we include others as we would be included as we go through our journeys. Invite people to hang around. If you'd like to stay and chat, go grab your coffee. And I think Barbara's going to put us into groups or rooms, correct?
I'm going to leave the meeting.
After our prelude.
Oh, after the
I mean, postlude.
Sorry, Jerry.